Meet the main character of this story, Jiang Chen. He encounters paranormal phenomena that he had no idea about. Every day he fights with different creatures called ghosts. However, our hero finds his own way to neutralize and defeat the ghosts. With each victory, our hero becomes stronger thanks to the system that supports him. During these dangerous, scary, sometimes funny adventures, he finds reliable allies. Now let's move on to the story. At the beginning of the story, the news reports that a maniac has appeared on Tianfu Street and has already killed 3 people. The skin of the injured people was torn out, and the victims' organs were severely injured. Some teeth were pulled out. On TV, the presenter continues to talk about information about the recently revealed maniac. So our hero showed up, just sitting in front of the television watching chips. Apparently what is said on TV is that the maniac on the street doesn't really bother him because he continues to eat the entire batch of chips. Again, journalists are already at the crime scene with the message that a family of 5 was killed. The next day, the news says that there were incidents with the skin being removed from the victims. Only now our guy realized that something was not clean here and threw his chips on the floor. Looking at the thunderstorm from the window of his apartment, he begins to guess about something, because according to the news, they are asked not to approach crime scenes. The rain outside makes him think that the killer may not be human at all. Strong lightning struck nearby, and on the floor below, apparently the alien from the film attacked our hero's neighbor. Having no idea about anything, the hero simply turns around and goes to his warm sofa, because all this is a common thing. Smiling, he talks about the fact that he also encountered such paranormal phenomena in the past. Memories begin in which he remembered that he died in bed in a previous life. He was lying in the intensive care ward where he lived the remaining seconds of his past life. At that moment, his entire skin was pale. Just a minute later, after the darkness in his eyes, he immediately found himself in the body of a child on the street during the rain in an unfamiliar place. While he stood there and shivered from the cold, suddenly someone from above covered him with a blanket, but he did not understand what it was. There was a kind old man who told our hero to now call him grandfather and followed him into the house. From that very moment, this old man who was just walking down the street became the only family of our hero in the new world. After rebirth, our hero, of course, thought that he would now live a calm and peaceful life, but the streak disappeared. He left a note behind him in which he wrote that he was leaving due to clan problems and left a savings book with large zeros in the account. Our hero, remembering all this, thinks that this is just a terrible cliche in all comics of this genre. Just because the old man disappeared into thin air, our hero has no idea where he is now. His thoughts and memories of the past were interrupted by a strong sound that was outside the front door. These sounds, of course, angered him, and, dissatisfied, shouting throughout the entire apartment, he began to walk towards the front door. But before opening the door, he decided to check who came and started screaming and making noise outside the door. It looked like they weren't knocking on his door, but the sound was undoubtedly very loud, and there was a girl standing there who had come to the next apartment. This girl apparently does not know the limits of physical capabilities because she hit the door so hard as if someone's life depended on it. Her skin was too pale as if she were a vampire, and her behavior was also unnatural. She climbed onto the door like a rock climber. Opening her mouth, which literally had shark teeth, she began talking through the peephole about how she knew who was inside. Taking a step back, even our hero was scared by this, and at first he thought that she was probably mentally ill or just a stalker. Thinking about others, he decided to write to his neighbor to warn him that there was some strange guy there, only she replied that he was not a person. And here they are, 3 people, 2 of whom are afraid of the one who is in the center, despite the fact that she is alone. Looking at her phone, she simply covered her mouth and cried like a little girl, not understanding what she should do now. The strange girl, having calmed down, began to simply listen at the door to catch at least one sound. Now she started banging her head on the door like crazy. It looks like this creature really isn't human. All these strong knocks on the door, which seemed to be about to break her, make her tremble so much that even her legs stopped holding her. The demonic creature just kept banging its head on the door, screaming for her to open the door right now. The redhead finally looked through the peephole and saw her face, and seemed to recognize her, writing about her identity to our hero. It was Li Yiwen who was a student and was used as a toy and was killed in the end. Looking at his phone, our hero also begins to remember this name because he had already heard about her somewhere. That girl named Li Yiwen began to hit the door harder and harder, no longer protecting her own body at all. Our hero decided to take a closer look at her and noticed that her skin had been removed and cuts were visible along with a hole from a knife in her throat. Finally, he remembered who she was, and Li Yiwen turned out to be the one who was the victim of a maniac who played with her and killed her. However, everything that they are now finding out does not help them in stopping her. With a smile on her face, she asked to open the door. A year ago, the girl who is running is she who, running away from a maniac, asks people to open the door, knocking on every door in front of her. As a result, no one opened the door for her, and the maniac was already right behind her. She screamed for help, asking him not to approach. This maniac turned out to be a man who was about 50 years old. Lee Yi-sun scratched his face when he tried to get to her. Opening the knife, he said that his conscience would not be clear if he did not repay her in the same way as she did. Turning back, she beat on the door, asking for someone to open the door, literally begging for everyone's help. No one answered her call for help, and the maniac began to cut her, striking her every second without a single feeling of pity. Her body was covered in her own blood, she sobbed, screaming in pain, and continued to knock on the door, but there was no answer either. He grabbed her by the hair and said that no one could help her, demanding that she stop banging on the door. Pulling her hair, he threw her in the other direction like a puppy. During all this time, behind all these screams, no one dared to come out and help. Having thrown that girl to the floor, he began to scream as if he was making an announcement, and threatened to cut the throat of everyone who would now leave his apartment. Everyone in the apartments began to lock their doors so as not to leave. It seems that everyone only needs their own safety. He began to mercilessly stab her more and more and scratch her face with the knife. There was no living space on her now. In just a few minutes, because of the maniac, she turned from a sweet girl into someone whose face was hard to recognize. The maniac himself, having disfigured her face, began to despise her for the fact that her appearance now looked like a corpse and wanted her to die. Grabbing the knife without any doubt before striking, he simply took it and stuck the knife in her throat. Leaving his knife in her throat, he simply left, talking on the phone about how he would just spend a little time in prison for self-defense. So, alone among the majority of the apartments, the helpless Lee Yi-wen lies in a pool of her own blood. The only thing that was strange was that justice was done 7 days later, where the man was found dead in his cell with a knife in his throat. If you return to the present time, you can see that the demon was tired of just beating against the door and began to think with his head, and she forced her hair into the keyhole to open the door from the inside. After some time of effort, she was finally able to open the door from the inside and heard the sound of the lock turning. He also heard the door to Hong's apartment open, and this made him scared, and trembling, he dropped his phone from his hands. This girl's ears began to move after the phone fell. It seems she heard sounds in our hero's apartment. With a smile from ear to ear, she stood up like a bridge and began to look at the door to our hero's apartment. It seems that her interest in Khan's apartment has already disappeared after that sound from the new hero's apartment. Still in the same position, she began to stick to the black-haired man's door and began to laugh like a mad doctor. Having stuck to the door, she began to knock and hit the door again, but only on the door of our hero. And she screamed at the whole entrance about what she knew about the person who was in the apartment and ordered the door to be opened. Hearing how she came to his door, he did not understand why this happened and began to curse himself for his carelessness. With a sharp, shadowy step, he went back 1 step, and that he was even sweating because he was trembling. But now it's not him who needs to be afraid, but that girl, because our hero armed himself and became the captain of the baseball team. Without a single fear, our hero decided to take the fight and shouted back to that demon so that she could enter the apartment right now. At this moment, a system window with a red smile appeared above our hero's head like an angel's halo. The system, after activation, gives him 100 ghost points, and he believes that the power he received 10 years ago has only awakened now. Right away, the system itself, analyzing the situation, offers the black-haired one to summon a demon card to fight the demons. While he was thinking, the door began to literally be knocked in, and from the blows, his door began to slowly lose its strength and protection. Since he has nothing else to do and he is already on the verge of death, he immediately agrees to accept the system's offer. It looks like he decided to get a little carried away with arcade games, because he pressed the lever to try to knock out 3 identical values. In the first one, some Chinese character appears to him, and the first candle lights up. The second time, the hieroglyph also appears, but it is different, and the second lamp lights up. All 3 reels spun, but the jackpot did not occur, and 3 different values came up. Despite the fact that he seems unlucky, he still receives some of the power of the fire that began to surround his body. The fireball went into the sky and exploded like Christmas fireworks in the streets, and our hero looks at it all like a little child. Some kind of brown bear appeared before his eyes and rejoiced from the fire. In the bear's stomach, there was a sign as if he was from the samurai clan. What kind of card was spinning at the top? And the system sent a message asking whether our hero wanted to use this card now. However, having distracted himself from the system, our hero noticed that it became suspiciously quiet, and the girl stopped breaking into his room. The system begins to get angry with him so that he answers, but our hero hesitantly refuses, asking to keep it in his inventory. At that moment, our hero's neighbor was hiding from this demon behind a red chair in her bedroom. Apparently, she was very frightened by everything that was happening, but all the sounds had already stopped and she began to look around, thinking that there was no more danger. But there someone hit the door to her bedroom and dropped things that should have been a barricade on the floor too easily. The danger, it turns out, had not yet passed, and being right outside the door, she peeked in and opened the door with her claws. She entered the room and, with the voice of a child, asked the red-haired girl to help her, because she was in great pain, but she simply covered her mouth. With a smile on her face, she came closer and closer, asking her to open the door, but someone's hand appeared from behind, calling the demon. Of course, our hero was there and called the beauty with a smile, asking this beauty about how the weather was for her today. Without being embarrassed or afraid at all, this pickup artist told the demon that she should follow him, still smiling in her face. It was only when she drew attention to him that, at the speed of light, he simply closed the door in front of her. This clearly angered the demon, and she began to yell at him, asking how he dared to close the door in front of her. She banged on the door, threatening our hero that she would eat his brains, but in our hero this does not cause fear but irritation. But all this is like a game for our hero, and he told the girl that this girl should get herself in order. Once our hero did this crazy stunt, the system gave him 5 ghost points for shaking the ghost. Seeing this message, our hero realized that if he causes mood swings in the evil spirits himself, he will receive points. And now he is already looking at her with a creepy expression on his face, as if the victim here is not he but she, wrapped in toilet paper. The demon's torment began, and our hero did not let her go, saying that she had just arrived, and asked her not to be shy and to go to the toilet with him. All his bullying could no longer be tolerated, and she decided to shout at him, telling him to stop. But in a calm tone, our hero asked her to look back to show her something strange, but he himself blushes. With a smile, he simply looked at her, and in the mirror she seemed to see herself just now and began to sweat. She was clearly sweating out of fear, because as soon as she saw herself, she began to be afraid of her own reflection, thinking that it was a monster. In tears, she stepped back and began to fall, screaming that the monster in the mirror wanted to kill her. Suddenly, the plot began to go in a different direction, and the genre changed to romance. Clinging to him, she complained. She was frightened by the monster in the mirror who showed her its claws and fangs, and began to cry in the arms of our hero. But even at this moment, the black-haired man did not despair, and came up with a new plan, and took her hand, giving her full support. I think these two will make a good couple that will be similar to the cartoon Beauty and the Beast, only everything will be the other way around. Having escaped from civilization, they decided to escape far closer to the sky. Namely, they went out onto the roof clutching hands. Having arrived there, our hero began to look around to make sure that no one would see them. The moment with love began again, where our hero again began to turn on his abilities as the favorite of all the girls. Our hero asked to go forward, but she does not want to go alone because they came here together and must go together. The system gave our hero 20 points for being able to make a ghost fall in love, and our hero asks her to deal with the monster. Even the terrible monster who scared everyone became an obedient child before his temptation and agreed with him. But our hero pushes her forward, asking her not to say anything, asking her to fly like a bird. As soon as he pushed her, at first she did not understand what he was talking about and why he pushed her. Still in a misunderstanding, she was already flying from the collapse of a multi-story residential building, and our hero asked her forgiveness for this. While she was flying, he received another 30 ghost points for tricking and throwing a ghost off the roof while praying for her to die. Like an asteroid, it falls from the roof onto someone's car, creating cool explosion effects in the background. It seems that a fall from the roof could cause considerable damage, even to a demon who had risen from the dead for revenge. She was lying on the wreckage of the car she had fallen on, and from the impact she was so exhausted that she didn't even have the strength to straighten her tongue. However, such a good move could not kill her, and she still opened her eyes, which looked like some kind of star in space. Even an atomic bomb cannot kill her, because the fact that she fell from the roof, on the contrary, increased her strength, although it should have weakened her. Our hero also guessed that there was no way to kill her unless he used what the system gave him, that is, a unique power. Thinking that he had no other choice, he decided to pick up the card that fell to him, and there was a tiger warrior. Standing in his heroic pose, he activated a card from which came out a projection of the very tiger warrior who would fight. Now he can use the power of that tiger warrior for half an hour, and this power makes him scream like a Spartan. The suddenly appeared force, which is now powerful for him, he was greatly surprised and amazed. It seems that only 10% of the total power had a big impact, because even his pupils were forming into those of a cat. Our hero activated the first ability of the card, namely the roar of the mighty tiger, which caused a fiery hurricane on the roof. She jumped forward after seeing what happened on the roof. With her claws, she was able to break through and grab the smooth wall of a residential building in order to climb up. She began to climb this wall at rapid speed, without even falling once. When she reached the roof, our hero appeared in front of her face and simply looked at her with a smile. But it seems she never decided to kill our hero, and simply stood in the same position with a thoughtful expression on her face. Our hero's acting skills suddenly turned on, and he began to allegedly worry, saying that he forgot about the height. With a smile, he offers her a helping hand to help her upstairs. The demon seems to have fallen for his trick for the second time, and gives her hand to him so that he can help her. There were roses and a wonderful atmosphere floating around, but the girl's only thought was to throw our hero down. It looks like the romance will still continue, because they were able to hold hands like a couple in love. This Sigma began to burn her palm and whole arm using the fiery power of the tiger, and she began to scream asking him to let her go. And of course, he decides to let the girl go if she is hurt, but grabbed her by the waist. But he is not going to dance the waltz because, blocking her hands, he raised her up, asking how he could let the beauty go. Now he has already stood on the edge of the roof. It looks like they want to do it together. Our hero is confidently about to fall from the roof with her, and lightning strikes all around. In the end, our hero turns to her with an evil smile and a gloomy face. Of course, he throws her down with his strength, giving her a boost to her fall speed with fire. Already using the force, he begins to create around himself the aura of that same tiger warrior, and then says that it will be difficult to kill her. Just like a rocket, he flies forward with all his might, because he is ready to make every effort to kill this demon right now. The evil spirit apparently still hasn't realized that now our hero will take her life, but now he's already flying towards her. This time the blow turned out to be much stronger than it was, because from such a speed that broke through the speed of sound, rings appeared. The tiger's successor looked through the smoke at the demon he had just flown into, but it looks like this is not the end of the battle. Although if you look at the fact that the girl no longer has a full-fledged body, you can understand that this is already the end. But she did not die. She screamed, asking for help, and at that moment some kind of toxic gas was coming out of her mouth and other wounds. This smoke was clearly unusual, and probably dangerous because our hero was able to sense it with the help of his power. However, such a weak and treacherous attack will not work on our hero because he used another skill. With the help of a powerful roar, he was able to remove the smoke screen, completely clearing the area of its smoke. After being hit by the sound wave, the ground was scorched, and there was a trace of smoke, but the ghost itself was not there. It seemed to have evaporated. The system reported the death of this demon, and sent our hero 99 points for defeating the evil spirit. He went into profit. He was about to leave from there, but it seemed he stumbled on some kind of hole in the road. Only it was not just a pit, but a real crater from the moon. But our hero hopes that all this will not cause panic. Without worrying about such a trifle, our hero decides to leave because anyway, no one saw what happened and no one will think about him. On the way to his apartment in the corridor, he decides to check the value of the system's spirit because there may be more dangerous spirits. Of course, the best and most correct decision would be to return to your apartment and only then study the system. We see the apartment in which our hero began the battle, and we hear a girl crying outside the door. This was Miss Hong, who was worried about our hero named Jiang Chen, thinking that he definitely died after jumping from such a height onto the asphalt. During this drama, our hero came up behind her and immediately began talking about the fact that nothing threatened her, and this made her scared. With fear in her eyes, she looked at our hero, asking again whether our hero was really standing in front of her now. With an awkward pause, our hero replies that it is of course him and no one but him. Again, a touching reunion. She grabs our hero and hugs him with all her might, pressing him to her. She begins to cry more and more, saying that she thought that he died while he was driving the demon away from her. Embarrassed, he said that he could die for such a moment again and again without a single thought about thinking. However, our hero, being completely cold, decides to ask her about something, asking her for a favor. She agrees, saying that she agrees to do anything simply for the fact that he saved her life today. Without taking advantage of the opportunity, he simply says that it's nothing and she just needs to keep everything that was secret from everyone. And that's all. This anti-hero begins to say with an evil smile that this will be their little secret for the rest of their lives. And of course she agrees because, according to her, she believes him, because Jiang Chen is clearly not a bad guy and you can trust him. Before he leaves, she plans to give him something and asks him to wait there. She was able to find something in her lockers, and that thing was a property deed. Our hero became a little worried when she held out this certificate, saying that the sour would transfer everything to him. But he refuses because he doesn't want to deprive her of income, because she rents out this apartment to tenants. She decides that he simply doesn't like this particular apartment, so she pulls out a few more pieces of evidence telling him to choose. Having seen all these apartments, he simply began to dream in his mind, seeing only money before his eyes and not evidence. At this time, Jiang Chen's brain simply imagined her as a queen of wealth who was willing to give him a chance to earn easy money. It looks like he was able to choose what he really liked because the certificate lay alone next to him. He himself sat in front of the laptop instead of going to bed, although after such a strange night, he no longer wanted to sleep. Our hero assumes that judging by the news and what happened today, it can be decided that someone more dangerous will appear soon. And his only way out is to become stronger, because he doesn't even know how to divide demons in his hierarchy. Using a search engine, he decides to find information about murders in his city recently, including today. Information was found that 3 people were killed on the landing and on the side of the road that day. Their bodies were either thrown away or badly mutilated due to many cutting blows, as if the killers were possessed. Our hero decided to assume that the technique of killing other ghosts is very similar to the technique of killing Yiwen, because it looks like possession. The place of the incident turned out to be very close to the university where our hero studies, so he decides to go there. Once he has made up his mind, he decides to close his laptop, because there is nothing else to do. Sweating from uncertainty, our hero decides that he can't just sit and wait for the ghost to come to the German himself. What he needs now is to find the ghost first. For this he of course uses his powers. Before us is Zhongbei University. It seems to me that since the surname of our hero is Jiang, this university is connected with the clan of his grandfather. Having arrived there after a certain period of time, his eyes immediately begin to sow because everywhere in the square you can meet beauties. The black-haired man was simply walking along the corridor of the university, but from behind he heard someone's voice calling him. Turning around in front of him, he saw 2 beauties. The black-haired and serious one was called Yang Chan, and the pink-haired one was called Lin Yue. 5 Caucasian guys stood there, apparently some kind of group, and looked angrily at the naked hero. Looking from the window, they began to discuss and curse our hero for the fact that such beauties, whom they call goddesses, approached him. The pink-haired woman came up and gave our hero something glowing, saying that her mother asked for this thing for him. Handing over this talisman, she asked to keep it close to her body. This thing glowed strangely. When our hero took this talisman, the evil spirit inside him began to react strangely. He immediately realized that this thing was not cheap. Shyly, she informs him that lately there have been too many murders in the city and asks him to be careful. Angry at Yue, Yang Cheng pulled him back towards her while covering her mouth with her hand. And she took her back, after which she shouted that they had to go but asked our hero not to go out at night. Our hero immediately dared to assume that she also knew that ghosts exist, which is why she gave her the talisman. The pink-haired one and Yang Chan began to talk in the same room, and the pink-haired one said that now her throat hurts. However, it didn't end there. The black-haired girl began to yell at her loudly because she had violated the rules of the Taoist League. She began to make excuses by saying that it was just a gift, and she didn't say anything special. Hitting her on the forehead, she says that our hero is just a weak and ordinary guy and he will never become like her and her family. But she just treats him as her friend. And all this is nothing more than a good relationship with a childhood friend. Yang Chan also fiercely adheres to his position and says that ordinary friends are not given talismans that cost $2 million. All her words seem to make her start crying, because for her an ordinary talisman is nothing for saving a life. If it weren't for Jiang Chen, who saved her from a strange man as a child, she can only imagine what would have happened to her. Our hero has already begun to guess and come to the conclusion that there is a power in this world that can cope with ghosts. With these words, he simply puts this super expensive talisman in his pocket, like ordinary trash. In our hero's thoughts, everything was spinning that this world does not yet know about the existence of ghosts. It seems the system of law. As soon as our hero entered his classroom, they immediately yelled at him from the doors themselves, marking him out. These were the same guys who were hunting for 2 girls, and now they are complaining that our Nero talked to them. There was a terrible noise in the class that some of the guys here could not tolerate. He turned back and ordered all these mongrels to shut up immediately, and this guy is the headman here named Zheng Xiaoming. In the same second, these guys fell silent and became quieter than water, lower than the grass. From the Starak, they even covered their mouths with their hands. This thug got up from his seat and came straight to our hero, and he thought that he was really huge because he eats well. And the headman, who looked like an American rapper, told our hero to come to his party because that same pink-haired girl would be there. However, without listening to him, our hero simply walked by, saying that he was not interested in such things. The headman is already beginning to slightly provoke our hero because he has a job after university and therefore cannot come. Our hero responds positively to him, and in return also provokes him because in his opinion, this group leader is just a spoiled brat. Apparently this was really true, because if it weren't so, this guy wouldn't have been so driven and his henchmen stood nearby. Here is the class itself in which there is no one except the headman, his minions, and our hero. Of course, he also wanted to overcome the obstacle that stood in front of him with the help of his words, so they immediately stood up. Guys with short haircuts and mohawks begin to figure out the problems, but our hero doesn't seem to know who he's messing with. He is told to apologize to the headman and not to be so impudent, but it is unlikely that all this worries him so much, and he decides to take a closer look, looking towards the headman who is standing behind him and waiting for something. The power that he had half strength made him too overconfident, because he was going to fight against 3 thugs and he called them names. And so he warmed up and was already beginning to straighten his fist towards 2 huge rocks, but he heard someone coughing. There was a professor there who said that Zheng Xiaoming's father sponsored a 2-day trip, and now everything there will be free. Everyone at the university starts screaming and rejoicing, literally blessing this headman for having a cool father. But our hero suspected that something was wrong, because Xiaoming's father cannot be so kind as to pay for everything. It looks like this old man will teach them English because his entire conversation was in English and everything was recorded. But while they were writing something down, our hero got distracted and noticed some kind of green glow in front of the headman. He used the very power that he received from the tiger, and with help, I decided to look at the headman with my green eyes. This was because Xiaoming had fingerprints on his back from a ghost, just like Yimin who came last night. Night City, night has fallen, and now it looks like everything may be in danger. Someone comes to some kind of landfill where there is garbage everywhere, saying that this needs to be cleaned up. It turned out to be our hero who decided to go to Tianfu Street after leaving the university. Before going on a dangerous mission, he asked the system to show the uniform in his inventory to make sure of his safety. Only he had 2 cards in his inventory, and he himself was not sure that they could be enough to kill everyone. Our hero was just walking peacefully, and that grandmother from the shop asked him where he was going now. Of course, without being afraid of anyone, he without any problems asks about what kind of dormitory a man named Zhang Meimei lives in. It looked like this was not a grandmother, but some kind of fat grown man, and when he learned this name, he was just a little scared. The man simply slammed his window and said that he didn't know who he was talking about, ordering him to quickly leave here. Our hero also realized that this land is not so simple, because as soon as that man heard her name, he immediately got scared and closed himself off. He walks along the road and complains that it is cold here, and not a single passerby is visible anywhere on the street. Suddenly, some strange aroma attracted the attention of his nose. It was really something strange. However, he was able to determine that it was the smell of a disinfectant, and this smell was coming from the apartment building in just a cloud. He decides to go there, because it was not in vain that he came here to catch several ghosts, but the smell becomes stronger. He finally arrives somewhere and sees the apartment or office number 101 on the sign. There was someone there, and this person seemed to be an innocent child who was simply eating his ramen while sitting in a cage. Our pickup artist is even ready to talk to the girl, and he approached her to ask about her habit of looking into the corridor when she eats. They looked at him with a scary look and told him to quickly get out of here because he was scaring her friend with whom she was eating. But our hero doesn't understand what friend she's talking about, because there was no one next to him. Our hero replies that there is no one here, and she says that he left after sensing his aura. It seems the talisman is really working. This girl started eating faster and faster, swallowing the ramen without even chewing it. Something seemed to frighten our hero, either some kind of roar or someone's scream, but it really scared this brave guy. Someone appears behind her, asking the girl about who she is talking to there. That grandmother came closer to the bars and, looking at our hero, asked him what he was doing here at such a late time. Of course, kindly, our hero decides to ask her too about her neighbor named Zhang Meimei. This name also surprised her and seemed to frighten her greatly because her pupils narrowed, but she did not say anything to him and kicked him out. Of course, after this, there is nothing left to do but simply walk away and go ask someone else about it. This grandmother was sweating after talking with our hero, but at the same time, she began to turn the handle of her door. Looking out from her apartment, she called our hero back in a whisper to tell him something. She decided to warn her that if someone asks him about beauty, he should just ignore it and run away. But he doesn't understand why he has to run as fast as he can when someone simply asks him a question. There was no answer to his question about what would happen to him, but only one thing was spinning in her head. This is how they will chop him into pieces, just because of the answer he tells her during a conversation. With sarcasm, our hero asks what if he tells her that she is beautiful. With a wide smile, she replies that she will give him a face as beautiful as hers to make him happy. And for our hero, it became interesting whether each ghost has its own trigger mechanism that makes it kill according to an algorithm. As soon as he began to approach the stairs to another floor, a cloud of bloody smoke appeared in the atmosphere. This seemed to greatly alarm our hero, and he decided to run up the stairs to figure out what was happening. A corpse appears in front of his face like a terrible screamer, but he does not react to it. Although no, he reacts very violently that he even swears throughout the entire corridor with a scream. The main thing is that he does not attract anyone's attention. This rather fresh, in his opinion, blood on the corpse frightens him, and the whole floor seems to be getting colder and colder with each floor. Another silhouette flies at him from above in this corridor full of smoke, and he thinks that now he will have to catch another rotting corpse. But he hit the jackpot, because a beauty fell from the sky right into his arms, but it seems he hasn't fully understood this yet. This girl had some wounds on her shoulders that looked like cuts from the claws of some lion or tiger. Opening her eyes, she looked and looked around, and seeing our egro, at first she thought a little. Right away, she decided to ask him if he was human, and if he could be trusted now. He didn't understand what this stranger was talking about. She gets up and grabs the hand of our stunned hero, for whom there is too much action going on right now. Quick movements, and they are already running away from this place where there is a ghost who seems to be hunting for them. Having just woken up now, he shouts after her about where she is taking him and about what she is doing now. She also shouts to him that she just wants him to survive and escape, so she asks him not to ask stupid questions. They are running towards some pipes. It was so fast that the speed of our hero's body even flew into the air. Now this squad leader is saying that the best solution now is to simply hide and wait for the moment. Embarrassed by the fact that he was squeezed by inflatable balls on the beach, he wants to hint to her that she should move. She asks him to push himself, and uses some kind of force because of which her hands begin to burn like a bright and warm fire in the forest. And with her hand, she activates some kind of seal on her hand that looks like a talisman, and fire spreads diagonally. She reads some kind of prayer asking some higher being right now to help them survive here. She sticks the fully activated and blessed talisman to the wall next to them. Like a sandstorm, this space begins to close there. Our hero, like a little renegade, was surprised by such a trick. And here they stand as if there was nothing here originally, and there was just an ordinary wall. She begins to give information about talismans, because they can only hide the anger of living beings and cannot save them from anything else. Here's the same green glow that came out of Yuan at the moment of her death, and a bunch of papers stuck to the wall. Some creature just appeared in the middle of the corridor and started laughing out of nowhere. Drawing her dagger across the wall and leaving some kind of bloody light, she kept repeating, asking if she was beautiful. In the corridor itself, there was some kind of corpse whose face was completely scratched, which is why it is, in principle, difficult to identify the person himself. Anger at one point overtakes this demon, because of which now the corpse has suffered a little and they decided to cut off its head. Hearing the screams of this ghost, which would clearly be more dangerous than the one our hero met, they both decided to remain silent. She continues to walk, holding a knife in her hands, thinking that there must be another person here who is hiding from her somewhere. She walked through some electricity point and kept asking if she was safe, ordering the man to answer her quickly. So she disappeared into the fog of that same green toxic glow without making a single sound before leaving. They too, thinking that she had left, decided to go out to the places where they were hiding. As soon as they left, the talisman immediately disappeared. Only now the girl begins to get acquainted with our hero. It turned out that her name is Chen Shu and she works with various paranormal interests. Looking at her, our hero decided that such matters also have their pros who deal with various problems of society. And he simply gives her his hand without saying a word, because he doesn't know what she will think about a newcomer like him if he tells the truth. Chen Shu decides to point out that she is just walking around, and therefore they need to stick together to survive. They continue to walk along the corridor, deciding how they should escape from this unfortunate place. But there was someone on the ceiling. It turned out to be the same ghost girl who asks questions about her beauty. It seems our hero is destined to meet only ghost girls. In my opinion, the author deliberately did not create ghosts of girls now in order to draw attention to his work. In her pupils, she looked at our hero, asking whether she was beautiful or not. It's like she's falling from a roof and decides to push off from the ceiling to land faster like a meteor. In her hands was a dangerous dagger, which she hid behind her back and laughingly asked, even asking questions in flight. Pulling out her knife, she decided to attack the girl first and leave our sweet hero for last as dessert. But the fighting girl has already been dealing with such ghosts for a long time, so there shouldn't be any problems. She uses her power. And with the help of a talisman of golden radiance, she strikes a ghost that was flying right at her, knocking her out. From an unexpected and strong blow, the ghost's weapon falls off and she becomes defenseless. From behind, our hero simply continued to watch. Although he could have dealt with her a long time ago, instead he was surprised and simply clapped. The recoil seemed to have worked on the spellcaster herself, and now she too was left without strength, but the ghost was simply blocked but not killed. Rising from her seat, she began to approach our hero and his new girlfriend with her legs completely open. Before the attack, of course, she decided to protect herself and picked up her knife, which seemed to have spells on it. Without attacking Chen Shu, she decided to turn to our hero, calling him brother. He was very surprised. With a smile on her face, she decided to ask our hero what he thought about her crust, whether she was beautiful. With the most sarcastic face, he answers her by saying that she is a beauty, just as if she is not from this planet. She apparently went crazy with his answer and began to laugh hard again and again, asking him this very question. However, the huntress does not like the fact that our hero is now provoking the ghost, and she decides to shout at him to stop answering. She begins to run forward, telling him not to answer. Otherwise, until his death, he will be forced to listen and answer her. She begins to attack our hero only because he said that she is beautiful through force, squeezing out words, but he abruptly jumps out of there, saying that he didn't say at all that she was really beautiful like no one else. Sweating as he escapes, he begins to note that she has real hearing problems if she couldn't understand that it was sarcasm. She begins to approach our hero more and more, saying that she will make him happy and beautiful. However, apparently our hero doesn't really like all these conditions because he just got stuck and stopped her blow with his own hands. The knife was standing right in front of his head, and he decided to ask her if she wanted to make him happy. "How is the weather now?" Our aggro picks it up as if he wants to throw it into a snowdrift and spins it like a wheel. And with the words that now they can really have fun together, he takes her somewhere into the distance, leaving her with black hair. With his feet, our hero immediately knocks down some wooden door in the corridor. And he comes into that very room, still holding her on his back like a sack, talking and asking her not to hold back. In shock, she asks him that he only wants to do this to her because she is beautiful, and calls him a bully. Turning to him, she still calls him hooliganism, ordering him to let her go immediately. But our hero apparently has his own plan for this girl, because his evil look can only mean one thing. Our hero begins to go even further and further, saying that his nickname in games is just a hooligan, asking her to introduce her to the beauty of the body. In her thoughts, she thought that our hero was really some kind of monster among the Huygens, because he was really going to do this. He starts moving his tongue back and forth like a real weird and crazy guy, as if he's about to enter a magical cave of creativity. She takes out her knife to show that she is armed and tries to push our hero away from her. But it doesn't matter to him because he goes to the end. Then she asks him to close the door so that no one will interfere with them. He actually goes and slams the door, locking it, and an early paranormal pro walks down the corridor. She thinks that our hero is trying to save her by sacrificing his life, and starts praising our hero for his great courage. But in the room itself, there was actually some kind of battle taking place, which of course our hero must win right in the bed. She pinned our hero against the wall, grabbing her knife with her teeth, but at that moment, our hero was not as confident in himself as he was. The mad ghost has apparently gone crazy again, because her eyes have turned very scarlet, and with a huge smile asks him to become beautiful. But it seems our hero doesn't need the same beauty as hers, and the longer he's here, the greater the chance that she'll cut his throat. Without slowing down the entire process, our hero decides to get down to business right away and opens the red python card. He treats her with understanding, saying that he really understands that she is insecure about her own appearance. With a mad look, he decides to suck on her so that she gets rid of her complex, and at the same time it will be for all eternity. With uncertainty and stuttering, she asks our hero about how he can help her with this problem. And our hero answers her by saying that she just needs to remove the excess tissue on her neck, and then she will become the same as the goddess of beauty. Pinching her cheeks adds to the fact that no one else will dare to judge her for her appearance, and will not say anything bad about her at all. And she begins to think about something at the level of human anatomy, and of course she realized that the tissue on the neck is the neck. It seems that the demon turned out to be not as stupid as our hero, because she immediately understood his rather subtle hint. Since he used force, he will no longer be afraid of it, and is ready to boldly and evenly take the blow. While her blade was flying at him, he just now used the skill that gives protection with the help of python armor. A terrible clash between two monsters begins, one of which is our hero, who has become the one who must devour ghosts. Only the ghost himself apparently did not understand why our hero suddenly had the power to repel the blade. Holding her own weapon in his hands, he simply throws the ghost himself to the floor without even thinking about feeling her pain. Holding his new weapon in the form of a knife, having removed the python armor, he began to examine his own hand. And I realized that despite the fact that he uses the skill, he can still cut himself. It seems that this is all thanks to the cell of this ghost. Having risen from the floor, she immediately ran in his direction, shouting at him to immediately return the knife to her. Again, this guy became every girl's dream guy, and the atmosphere around him became like he was on the beach. Only now this knife belongs to our hero, and it's up to him to decide what to do with it, so he stabs her. A second after she opened her eyes, she looked around and didn't understand how she managed to get off the ground. And only after some time, she was able to understand that the body that was lying next to her was her old body. Angrily looking at how she lies helplessly, our hero begins to burn this ghost with his mud, smiling during the process. Such a loud sound from the room frightened the girl who was behind her, and apparently she didn't quite like it that she even looked away from the door. With tears in her eyes, she looked at the door because she thought that the guy with whom they were practically strangers sacrificed himself for her. She takes out her emergency dagger and storms straight into the room without worrying about anything else as her emotions run high. And there was our hero, who now had a lump on his head with tears in his eyes. He looked at it, saying that he could open it himself. Finally, there was a street that our hero couldn't just see for a long time, and he was very happy. Together, they walked through this apartment building in the corridor, and our hero simply hummed some kind of melody. And the girl walking behind him decided to ask him about how he was able to kill this demon, and with a smile, he replied that it was a secret. So they came to the very beginning where it all began, and saw a corpse with a severed head lying there in a pool of blood. But our hero had apparently already become fearless and began to touch the corpse, saying that he actually knew that it was a ghost. No matter how he touched and wherever he touched, there was no reaction, and he, of course, despaired. After all these experiments, he decides to check the condition of the corpse, and decides that it still doesn't stink of rot. The girl begins to ask our hero that he is also a guy with oddities. It seems that she was able to find a kindred spirit. It seems that her words greatly upset our hero, and he was offended, asking again whether he really was like some kind of eccentric. For the girl, this was not something strange, because strange creatures now live in many corners of the world, and it has become a habit. With a smile that everything is over, she goes into her phone to check the notifications she has received. With the help of a fingerprint, Chen Xiong begins to log into his account in some application. An explanation of some forces began, where they are divided into Daomen and Yinkao, and these are the two largest forces at the moment. Daomen, the world of fire, spends millions of effort and resources to recruit its strange people, who are turned into monsters. But Yinkao is doing everything to make his inner strength stronger and stronger, that is, precisely the members of their clone and family. But they created this application together, so she asks our hero to quickly scan the invitation code. And it turns out that our hero can take a photo of the ghost body and get points for reporting it. And all these points are currency in the world of strange people, which is similar to gold in different games. While this apparently greatly surprised our hero, who most likely will not miss the chance to grab and use this entire application. Of course, a newbie who doesn't understand anything about all this will immediately decide to ask several million of his own questions. There are so many questions that even she cannot answer, so she simply decides not to answer and shut his mouth. She becomes more serious, saying that there is another ghost in this building, and they should get out of here as soon as possible. Only the frivolous Jiang Chen could not be frightened by this, and he became even more interested in this yet another ghost. She apparently didn't like his joke and behavior itself, and she decided to warn him that this ghost was very powerful and had a high rank. This guy also became extremely serious, but in his thoughts, he doesn't even understand why she became so serious. So a sense of duty calls to him, which has not been there for several days in a row. Now he needs to protect the residents of this house from attacks by ghosts. Turning back, he continues his way with the words that his new Uel is a ghost of the highest rank in anger. She still decides to agree, because our hero saved her life and now he owes him, so she still decides to follow him. Of course, he doesn't even know where the ghost is, which he is so diligently looking for throughout the house, and he ended up on the 7th. It looks like this girl is really trying to find at least some meaning in this guy's words, thinking that her choice and responsibility are also hers. But our hero's head was worried about something else, since there were only 18 minutes left before his transformation into a demon would end. Finally, our hero came to the 6th floor, where the sign was broken into pieces, and there was an inscription near the closed room that there was a beauty salon. Arriving there, our hero began to smell the disinfectant even more, and therefore decides to check this place. He comes here talking about how Zhang Meimei was supposed to become a ghost after plastic surgery failed. He walks a little further in the corridor and finds some coins that were hanging on a rope and does not understand whose they are. She says that this thing belongs to her, and it was something like a trap for Zhang Meimei, so she left it here. When our heroine was about to finish off Zhang Meimei, another ghost appeared and prevented her from killing the ghost. Apparently, our hero knows nothing at all about this place, because again and again he asks about what kind of ghost it is. The black-haired woman begins to say something like, "The ghost is on the other side," and asks our hero to look there. After all, by the fact that Orna sees the ghost is really strong, and the aura is very toxic green, it looks like a ghost at the end of the corridor. Someone starts ringing the doorbells with their fingers, and a sound appears. Behind some glass stood the silhouette of a girl who simply looked forward. And apparently this girl is not a ghost, because she has normal skin color and normal eyes, asking about who they are looking for. There was a black-haired woman who decided to show her ID, saying that she was a police officer who came here to deal with the incident. After such a performance, They are immediately allowed right inside the house, and our hero is surprised that this application is very convenient to use. When they went home, there was some strange smell, which our heroine called musty and looked around. In the house itself, on the walls, she saw several family photographs of a father, mother, and their child. Our hero also decided to come up and take a closer look, and also assumed that this could be a family photo. Now only together they suddenly realized something, and with incredible speed they turned back to that same girl. They ask if there is anyone in the house besides her at the moment. She replies that now there are only her and her son in the house. The fact that she said the word son alarmed our hero a little, and he decided to ask the gloomy man again. Our hero confidently tells her that he wants to talk to her son and asks her to pull him out, but this makes her previously unemotional. Nervously, she begins to touch her hair, asking if this is all necessary because he is only 8 years old and is harmless. With a smile on her face, the black-haired woman begins to calm her down, saying that this is just a simple testing procedure. Still, she decides to agree with them and goes to her son's room to call him to come out to meet the guests. Our heroine turns out to have talked with the residents of the house before, and there is another strange person besides Jiang Mei. Most of the residents of the house saw a boy in the corridors who was sitting in hiding eating something very appetizing on the 6th floor. Our hero remembers that he once scared away the friend of some girl with whom she was eating her ramen, because this boy cannot be him. Whispering in her ear, she adds more and more information, saying that she has found out something related to the victims. While they were talking, the boy's mother came up to them and simply looked at them with a deadly look, and they were scared. She tells them that her son doesn't want to just come out and talk to them, so they should go into his room and talk. So they decided to go into his room, knocking on the door with a smile on her face, and she walked in first. There was one boy sitting on the table who was just reading a book, and his room was beautifully decorated. It looks like this boy turned out to be normal because he doesn't have red eyes like ghosts, but he is very wary. Turning in their direction, he hesitantly decided to ask them why they had come to him. Having understood the whole situation, the dark-haired girl immediately began to act, saying that she was a friend of her mother who came to visit him. Under the guise of his mother, this boy does not understand who she means and asks if she is talking about the woman outside. This 8-year-old guy is too scary for someone who reads fairy tales, because with an angry look he says that that woman is not his mother. Our hero thinks that this boy is simply lying, because in the photo where the family is depicted, there is him and his mother. He provokes more and more by asking why she is not his mother, calling him a lying boy. He began to sweat even more and more, saying that he was telling the truth and this person had long ceased to be his real mother. Grabbing this strange guy by the head, our hero gives him the floor and asks him to continue telling some story. He begins to remember the moments from that evening when everything changed. That day, his mother washed her hair in the sink and asked her husband to peel an apple, but his father cut an apple for him and his mother, immediately following their orders, and cut it completely perfectly. At that time, the time on the clock in the night was exactly 1 minute to 12 o'clock at night. This boy at that moment was thin, and a completely ordinary child who liked everything sweet and tasty. It was that evening that his father cut an apple straight, completely and suspiciously long, the peel of which still did not end. His father decided to show off a little in front of his wife as he coolly cut an apple while she was still washing her head. So the time came on the clock where it was exactly 12 o'clock at night. It seems that at that moment everything went wrong, because without getting up she simply smiled and looked at them. Her husband just wanted to feed her with his hands, but she refused and began to be rude, saying that she could eat the apple herself. It was after this strange moment that everything strange began to happen in their family, that he even dropped his lollipop after this. Mom in life ate an apple with wet hair, while his mother in the mirror continued to simply wash her head. After listening to his story, our hero decides to ask about what began to happen next as time passed. He says that at that moment he was simply scared when he saw this, and simply ran to his room out of fear, so he doesn't know for sure. The only thing he could say was that after that his mother stopped cooking, and he had to ask friends for leftover food. Our colleagues begin to consult among themselves about what they can do in such a situation. Zhangchen says that he begins to remember one strange conversation in the city, while making a mysteriously thoughtful face. According to rumors, if at 12 o'clock at night the apple is completely clean and at this time you look in the mirror, then the ghost will take her body and soul. The two detectives decide to go into the bathroom together and look at the mirror to confirm their suspicions about this. They finally leave the room and head to the bathroom at a slow pace. Only in front of the sink there was not a single trace of the mirror, although there were only nails on which it was attached. They immediately notice that there are still nails there and assume that they decided to remove the mirror quite recently. Now, while the investigation is underway, the call of the mother is heard, shouting that she has managed to prepare food and asks everyone to sit down at the table. Looking at each other, they say that the boy said that his mother does not cook for him, and they decide to just observe the situation. The dish on the plates was some kind of meat on which larvae were crawling, but they were still alive and the meat was raw. Looking at such food, I would have already gone crazy and died of fear, but these two just like to joke about the fact that the food is better in prison. Mom looks at them and asks them whether they eat such dishes or not, but her face is still the same. Jung Chen starts to turn on the cool mode and says in response that the food is too simple for them. This drives the black-haired girl crazy. Kindly, this strange man returns to the kitchen, saying that he is ready to cook whatever their heart desires. Our hero seems to be a genius of sarcasm, because he asks her to prepare a special gourmet pork stew with strawberries for them. The system's notification that our hero had deceived the ghost from the mirror made him understand that all this time he was right more than ever. However, while she was walking to the kitchen, our hero stops her, saying that she should better order food at home. This guy seems to be a real vampire who can suck out all the emotions, because he asks to order a horse's eye as his main food. It seemed like she was always ready for someone to ask, because she had one horse's eye in her refrigerator, which she kept. 5 minutes later, right in front of our hero, a food called horse eye and kimchi was prepared on a plate. He sat and watched, and that woman asked him why he didn't eat. Did he really not like the food she had prepared? He takes this huge delicacy to his shelf and brings it closer to his face, but seems hesitant to bite. However, after everything, nothing can stop this guy, and even the feeling of nausea should simply be afraid of his name. He bit, of course, but didn't swallow it right away. It really made her just sit there in shock. But he didn't seem to like it, and he spat out his eye, which had already deflated after his bite. Our hero begins to say that her food has nothing special, but on the contrary, the food doesn't even have salt as a minus. The ghost begins to get angry and thinks in her thoughts that she urgently needs to find out where this pran came from. The system gives him points, and our hero begins to say something about how they eat dogs, and this is considered cruelty to animals. Out of anger, the ghost's energy only began to grow exponentially, and Xiang was simply perplexed. Only for our hero, this did not pose any danger, and he decided to give her another chance and asked her to prepare the dish. The provocation begins with the fact that he says that she will not have to boil the man, especially for this dish. He simply picks up the boy, looking straight into her eyes and showing her that she has all the necessary ingredients for the dish. Showing 3 fingers, he says she just needs to peel it, put it in boiling water and cook it. These are 3 simple steps. All his jokes seem to have already crossed all boundaries, because she now has red eyes. Her entire skin begins to turn a different color, and fangs appear instead of teeth. Even the coma on your hands becomes different, and claws appear on your hands. The angry ghost shows our hero its true essence, but they only showed it to kill him. Our professional in paranormal phenomena accurately determines that this ghost is definitely evil of the highest rank. This time everything is the same, but more openly, because our hero showed his shoulder saying that he wants to play with this ghost. However, this pink berserker clearly has no time for games, although he is now ready to play a fight to the death with our hero. Already at this moment, our hero had already turned on his abilities and began to provoke the ghost more and more, asking stupid questions. Now this is probably the first battle in which he is so serious, because before this he did not attack first, although he uses a skill. He immediately set up a barrier, and marked his boundaries in the fight against her with the help of the red python's claws. Suddenly there is a big explosion on the entire floor, and lightning comes out along with the explosion. There, the ghost began to break through his barrier, which was created using special power and broke like thin ice. The fact that his barrier began to break and collapse right before his eyes really surprised him, because this had never happened before. Now the moment came for which only time was needed. This higher ghost was able to easily break through and attack towards our hero. Our hero began to sweat and shield himself from the blow, only because now he definitely couldn't change anything. Only the ghost himself jumped in his direction with a smile from ear to ear, and our hero walked back. The special power of this ghost has become clear. His skill turned out to be hypnosis acting on the brain, but will he be able to get out and win?